In my opinion, getting a perfect drum sound can make or break a record. If you have the drums in your song feeling really, really good, I think the entire production just kind of falls into place. Drums really determine how big or how small a song is going to feel. A perfect drum sound can really determine the genre that the song is going to fall into. And I think that sometimes we put a lot of pressure on that and we search for the right samples for hours and we tweak them beyond oblivion and we layer and we end up farther away from our original vision than we intended, which is why sometimes what I like to do rather than searching through an endless sea of samples is literally just create my own from scratch. If I hear a sound in my head and I know exactly what the song needs, I would rather just create it rather than trying to tweak something that might not be exactly what I want. And up until this point, drum synthesis has been pretty convoluted and overwhelming and daunting to kind of get into, but there's a brand new plugin on the market called Tekno by Baby Audio that really simplifies this process. And what we're going to do is we're going to use that plugin today, and I'm going to explain my entire mindset behind creating sounds for specific songs, creating sounds for sample packs. I'm going to show you exactly how to dial in a kick drum, a snare drum, a hi-hat, toms, percussion. And by the end of this video, you should get to see exactly how and why I create drum samples from scratch. And it's easier than ever before with Tekno, which actually brings me to the sponsor of today's video, which is Baby Audio. If you've watched our channel before, you know that we've worked with Baby Audio a ton in the past. I love them so much. I use so many of their products. So when they sent over Tekno for me to try, I fell in love with it immediately. This has really, really simplified drum production and drum sound design. Each of these pads on Tekno is a certain sound. So you have kicks, snares, hats, claps, percussion sounds, rim shots, and each little pad has its own synthesizer behind it. So you can really dial in a drum sound and you can get as specific and nitty gritty as you want. There's tons of effects in here. Like you have subharmonic generators, you have exciters, saturation, you have reverb, you have sidechain and ducking, you have limiters and clippers. There's a humanization function. You can also go to a mix tab where you can really dial in your entire drum mix inside of one plugin. If you prefer to route it out, there is multi-out routing. There's a ton of amazing presets that you can start with. We have a couple presets in there. Bad Habit has presets. Venus Theory has presets. Virtual Riot has presets. Mr. Bill has presets. There's a ton of really amazing starting points. There's also randomized functions all over the plugin. So if you like just randomizing things and finding a cool starting point, you can do it to the drum pads. You can do it to the synth engines. You can do it to the effects units. It is wild what you can do inside of one plugin, so I'm really excited to dive in and show you. But again, massive thank you to Baby Audio for sponsoring this video. If you want to check out Tekno, there is a link in the description. It is on sale right now at its intro price for $79, and if you use the code MPM10 at checkout, you actually save an additional 10% on that. So you could get this entire drum engine for just about 70 bucks. Go check it out. There is a link in the description. Thank you to showing love to our sponsors, and massive thank you to Baby Audio for sponsoring this week's content. Let's dive in and let's actually check out Tekno, and I want to show you how I create a drum production for a song. So here is kind of the layout. Here's where you have your drum pads up here. If you click on a drum pad, it'll change the parameters for the synthesize and the effects section. And then over here is your utility for that pad. So you have panning, you have volume, and there is a ducking function if you want to sidechain a certain element to another element. So let's say you want to sidechain your snare to your kick. All you would need to do is select snare, go to sidechain kick, and you can adjust it right here. Inside of each little parameter, you can get really nitty gritty with the macros, but if you want to take it a step farther, you can open up this little cog icon, and this is where you can actually dive into the drum synthesis underneath the hood and really get specific with your sound design. You can do the same thing with effects over here, which is where you can control things like your dispersion, your exciters, your saturation. You can control things like your subharmonics. All of that will be over here, and you can open or close those just by clicking the icons on these little tabs. So synthesize, effects, over here is utility. You have your mix kind of window over here where you can adjust all of your levels. You can mute things, solo things. You can change naming conventions. There is a reverb tab. This is where you can adjust all of your reverb settings that will be from this end right over here. There is your limiter setting. This is where you can adjust the settings that control your master limiter. There is your humanization. This is where you can control time, pitch, and accent humanization. And then there is your other. This is where you can control things like the release of that ducker over here. You can also control things like your clipping ceiling and your clipping Q and filter Q and things like that. So you can get really crazy inside of this plugin. There's a lot of, presets to kind of start with. There is randomized functions, but for today's video, I really want to dive in and I want to show you exactly how to create sounds from scratch with no help. So we're going to go ahead and reset this to initialize, and I'm going to show you the song that we're going to be working on. This is what we've got working today. So we've got a kind of nice, soft, housey, trancey song. So what I want to do is I want to start with a kick drum. I'm going to go ahead and solo out kick, and I just have a 4 on the floor. And this feels really aggressive right now. This is kind of the initial preset. What we can do is we can turn frequency right here to pitch, which is where I like to start with kick. And I'm gonna make this D sharp 1. That just falls in the key of the song that I'm working on. And then we can adjust our length. Your length will kind of be your main release. Shape over here is gonna really be your sustain. So if you prefer a really short blocky kick, you could go short with your length, long with your shape. If you prefer something that's a little bit softer, you can bring that shape down, extend that length, and get something more like a traditional 808. We're gonna pull this subharmonic down right here. We don't really need it for this kind of pitch that we're working on because we're already at such a low tuned kick. But for right now, I just wanna dial this in. We're gonna pull this down to probably right around 45, 50%. We're gonna pull this shape up just a hair, because that's what's gonna add quite a bit of that body. And then we're gonna pull the click up, but we're gonna pull the tame down, which is kind of the EQ of the click. I don't need all of that click, especially for something like this soft little house song. And then if you wanna get really specific, this is where you can really start to shape the tone of that kick. So now I'm gonna loop it so we can hear it. And I'm gonna start adjusting this resonator. This is what's gonna adjust exactly where the harmonics, especially in the mid-range of that kick, sit. So this is where you can get a really mid-range heavy, blocky, clipped kick, or you can get something that's a little bit softer and more scooped. So I'm gonna dial these in until we get something that feels a little bit softer. You can also change your resonator dampening, which will essentially control, it's like another way to control your release and your sustain. I want something that's clicky and kind of tight, and to take it to the next level, I'm gonna add a little bit of extra excitement, and what I wanna do is I wanna go into the effects right here, and I want to really just start dialing in the filter. So I don't need a lot of that extra clicky top end right now. If you want to automate things up later, every single parameter is readable and writable. But for right now, I don't need a ton of that. So I'm going to pull this closer to down here. We're not really using the subharmonic, so I'm not going to worry about it, but this is where you can add in those harmonics if you want. It's a great way to kind of make a kick that has a little bit of extra sauce, especially in the low end. But for right now, that feels like a good starting point. We'll pull it down a couple dB just so it's not going to clip our master. And we'll pull this clipper up because I like the way that their clipper sounds in here. They put a really, really good limiter and clipper in here where you can just really drive it if that's the sound that you're going for. But let's say you really love that kick and you want to export that sample that you can use later as a one-shot, or let's say that you want to arrange your things not in MIDI. All you need to do is take it and you can drag it onto your actual session, and it's going to just export that kick drum in full resolution. Now I have that kick drum if I want to add that to a sample pack, if I want to add that to my favorites library. It's really fun. I like that they added sample exporting in here. It makes it super exciting to me, but that kick sounds great right now. Now that the kick feels pretty good, what I want to do is I want to start working on the hi-hats. So I'm going to solo hat A as well. And what I ended up doing is I actually wrote in a little bit of automation for hat A pan. So it's going to pan between left and right. Just to kind of give me a little bit of variation between left and right. But let's go ahead and let's start dialing in this hat right now. The main thing that you're going to want to work with is the synthesize engine is kind of the pitch and the decay, in my opinion. I kind of want a lower pitched hat, so I'm going to go more down here. If you want to shorten this up, you can shorten up the decay. If you want it to feel more like an open hat, you can go all the way up here. It's kind of a cool parameter to automate as a song gets more intense. You could automate that decay up a hair. I'm going to leave it right around here, probably right around 60 to 70 right now. Your cutoff over here, this is essentially cutting off all of the low end. So if you want a super low end heavy, I don't need a lot of that right now. So I'm going to pull it up here, probably around 8K. And then I'm going to add a little bit of extra excitement and saturation. And we'll open up the synth engine just to make sure that I don't want to adjust the resonator at all. I think it's okay. Feels good to me right now. That's really all I need. If you want to go into the filter, you could also do things like open up your effects right here, and you could do your low cut and your high cut. I don't really need it a ton for this sound, especially since we have the cutoff right here as a macro. That feels pretty good to me right now. If you want to sidechain this to like a snare or a clap, you can just select that. We haven't dialed those in yet, so I'm going to leave it for now. But we have a pretty good hat. This is going to be our slightly bigger kind of back hat. So for this one, I want it to be a little bit darker, a little bit lower pitched, and quite a bit more decayed. And this one has more of a metallic sound. If you open up the synthesis, you'll see that there's actually a metal synthesizer in here. It's really cool and fun, but I want to show you how you can kind of soothe out some of those metallic resonances if that's not the exact vibe that you're going for. So you can go to your oscillator over here, and you can adjust all of your oscillator parameters. You can go to your pulse down here if you want. Pull this down. And then down here, you have your resonator as well. We're not even really going to touch that. But over here in your ring mod and your exciter, you can really, if you want to add ring modulation, you would probably need to extend the decay a little bit. We're not going to use that right now because we're still staying around like 80 milliseconds. So we don't need the ring modulator. You could work on things like tilt if you want, or you could work on things like filter if you want. I'm actually still going to make this a little bit lower. And we're going to pull the depth down a hair. Let's hear that now. We're going to adjust some of these until it kind of is fitting where I need it to. Add a hair of reverb if we want. We can also go to the reverb tab over here and really just start figuring out what we want to do. So let's just open up that reverb. We're going to shorten up the decay a hair. I'm probably going under a second. Shorten up the size a little bit as well. Add a hair of pre-delay. And then other than that, the filters are probably fine. Let's hear it in the mix. That's feeling all right to me right now. All right, so now we have kick. We have our main hats. Let's move on to a snare drum. For this, I want something that's going to be a little bit clickier. I don't really want that like blocky 909 snare. I want something that almost feels more like a rim shot. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by the size right here. We're going to bring this repitch up just a hair, and we're going to pull this ring modulator all the way up. For sizzle, we're going to pull it all the way down here. That's essentially our white noise. And then spark. Feeling a little bit better already. We can go to our dispersion over here. Dispersion is essentially what's going to give it that really zappy attack. If you go to your dispersion settings, you can tweak the filter. That feels pretty good to me. You can also go down here and you can do things like if you want to filter out some of the low end. That works a little bit better to me. If you go to your synthesis engine for this snare, we can adjust things like our noise. We can also adjust the noise scale. You can adjust your Q. I don't really need that for right now. The low modes and the high modes are really where you can adjust the tone. And then if we layer that, bring that sizzle down just a hair, add a bit of exciter, a bit of compression, and a bit of saturation. Let's pull this size right around here. Let's go back to our low modes and high modes. It's not feeling exactly where I want it. Dispersion, we'll pull down to 1%. Excite, we'll pull down a hair. Sizzle, we'll pull down. There we go. We're starting to get there. There we go. Let's hear that now. We're going to sidechain that just a hair to kick A. I am going to go over here and I'm going to make that ducking release way shorter. Add like a couple dB of reverb. Kind of took away some of that resonance on that filter. Now it's just a little bit sharper, and that feels pretty good now. Let's adjust some of these levels, because right now, that hi-hat's a little bit loud. That's feeling much better. We'll go in and we'll make like a B kick and a B snare real quick. For this B, I don't want it to be tonal like that. You could make a really cool 808 like this, but what I want to do is I want to make something that's a little bit clickier and punchier. So we're going to go to A sharp's number 2. Basically, it's just A sharp in the second register of a keyboard. We're going to go to our length. We're going to shorten that up. We're going to go to body. That's fine. We're going to go to drive. Tilt. Excite, we're fine right here, but we are going to add some saturation. Let's go to our humanization. There we go. Let's go to our synthesize function, see if we want to adjust the pulse or the pitch mod. I think we're fine over here. I really just want something that can kind of act as like a little accent, like this. I like that little glitch kind of kick that we have going there. For snare B, what I want to do is I want to add something that has a bit more brightness. I want to have something that is essentially just the white noise of this. So I'm going to drag the frequency down just to kind of get rid of some of the fundamentals. We'll pull the body all the way down, sizzle all the way up, and spark all the way up. We're going to pull the reverb pretty much all the way up. Pull it way down in the mix. Excite up. And then let's actually dive into here. This synthesized oscillators, it's pretty much the same as snare A, but you'll see that there's just slight differences here and there. Let's see if there's anything that we want to tweak. This pitch mod. And then tone down here. That's fine. I'm probably just going to go over here and we're going to take out all that low end essentially. So let's go over here. And we're going to sidechain this to snare A. So now let's hear it. Yeah, that feels cool to me. I kind of like it lower pitched. Maybe let's do that because we can also have like open hats that kind of add a little bit of back bend. Let's go ahead and dial in this open hat real quick. Brightness will pull up a hair. Pitch will pull down. Decay will pull down. Attack will pull up. And then cutoff is fine. We're going to probably go to the synth over here because I want to dial in that metal oscillator. We did this with the hat earlier. So far, there's no rhyme or reason to the numbers that I'm doing behind this. I just do it until I have a sound that I prefer. Let's go ahead and do the tilt all the way up. I don't want too much of that saturation because I don't need that low end kind of distortion that it's adding. We'll pull the brightness down. We'll pull this cutoff down a hair. For repitch I might actually do inside the mix. We'll have that kind of slightly sidechained to hat A. If you want it to be more like atonal, where it's just kind of that noise, you can drive the cutoffs to where they basically are just creating a little bit of white noise. Let's make a little crash over here as well. I'm going to pan this to the right just so it can kind of sit opposite of that original hi-hat. Let's solo this out. All right, for this one, what I want to do is we'll pull this pitch almost all the way up. We're going to pull saturation way down. We're going to pull shape way up and tilt way up. For this frequency, we're probably fine right around there. Length, we'll do right around here. Resonance and warp. We could add a little bit of ring modulation. Let's go over here. Maybe I have a slower rate. And we'll blend that in much less. For this synthesize function over here, we probably don't need to do too much to like this pulse. Adjust that comb resonance. And then again, if you just want to get rid of some of that like low end, what you could do is just filter it. That feels pretty good. The last thing that I want to do is I want to dial in some kind of little clap. Their clap is super simple. You can really just adjust the pitch. Let me pull it down a little bit because it's super loud. And then you can adjust the hands. That's essentially how many noise generators. If you want just like a really simple, I like right around 4 or 5. And for the spread, I actually prefer them. This is kind of the difference in milliseconds of all of the noise generators. That makes it sound like multiple claps happening. We can drag the early reflections and drag the late reflections down. Kind of tighten it up a hair. We'll pull the dispersion all the way down. Let's do a little bit more. Pull the excite and the saturation down, pull the compressor down. And we're going to sidechain this to snare A just a hair. Then you can dial in some congas if you want. These are really simple. You can just dial these in with tone and pitch. Same thing with the toms and all the tonal percussion over here. We're already running a little bit long, so I'm going to skip the tonal percussion. But when I'm doing this, I would essentially just pick notes that kind of fall into the song that I would want. So A sharp, D sharp. I think we've got like an F in here. I would essentially just find things that kind of create almost a little melody inside the drums. And you can tune them to that with the pitch knobs. The toms all have the ability to swap between pitch and frequency. And then if you want things like rim shots, claves, blocks, you can do things like that. But for right now, I feel good with the kick, clap, snare, and hats and crashes that we have. So let's take a listen to what we came up with. Let's hear it in the mix. Pull that clap down a hair. You can get really nitty gritty with a mix if you want. You can also get really nitty gritty with like the limiter and the humanization. I don't need it for much on this. Now as it builds, we go back over here. And that's essentially my entire mindset when I'm trying to figure out how big do I want to kick, how much noise do I want in a snare versus how much like rim sound do I want in a snare. Do I want hi-hats to be low pitched, high pitched? Do I want them to be short decay, long decay? Sometimes it is faster to literally just dial in. If I wasn't explaining this, I could have made this entire drum pad section in 5 minutes just by looping the song. And I would spend way more than 5 minutes figuring out what samples I want, figuring out how to tweak the samples that I want. Like I said before, if you like using this to create the sounds, but you prefer to build your actual drum arrangements in another program, you can create the sounds and just drag them out to your DAW. If you prefer to mix everything however you like, you can do the multi-out routing. There's literally endless options for this plugin. I think, especially right now at its intro sale with our code NPM10, getting this for $70 is an absolute steal. So once again, massive thank you to Baby Audio for sponsoring this week's video. Tekno is an amazing plugin. We don't do sponsors very often on this channel, so if you see me ever promoting something, it is a tool that I really do believe in. This is a tool that I will use almost every single day. I'll be making samples for MP Impacts using this. I'll be making freebies using this. This will show up in all of my client productions. It's a really, really great plugin. As always, they knocked it out of the park. Go check it out. Go check out some of the presets that we made for Baby Audio's Tekno. We might be doing more in the future. But other than that, I appreciate you guys for watching this. Go show our sponsors some love. Much love to Baby Audio, and I will see you guys soon. Peace.